Well, we here at the Coalition are very excited to have our next speaker, Dr. Daniel Hughes. We started up our PRC programs back at the end of 2016, knowing we wanted to share an evidence-based trauma-responsive parenting class to our post-adoption and guardianship families. And we had the great luck at the time to learn about the Foundation for Attachment Training resource, which is a 6-session program for parents with traumatized children put together by one of his proteges, I believe she is, Kim Golding. And we based our Reframing Parenting series on that curriculum. Now, many of the great parenting ideas that were in that curriculum were inspired by our speaker this evening. And he actually wrote a heartfelt foreword when that curriculum got published in early 2017. So we are especially grateful that Dan Hughes is with us today, going to present on Making a Difference, Parenting, the Past, and PACE. And PACE is being both a parenting attitude and an acronym for playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. Dr. Daniel Hughes is a clinical psychologist with a practice in South Portland, Maine. He founded and developed the dyadic developmental psychotherapy, DDP, the treatment of children who have experienced abuse and neglect who demonstrated ongoing problems related to attachment and trauma. This treatment occurs in family settings, and the treatment model has expanded to become a general model of family treatment. He spent over 40 years helping children and youth reach their full potential and reconnect with others in their lives. And even though, and the only reason why he gets stage fright, because he's only worked in this field for 40 years. Dan has authored many books, including Attachment Focused Parenting, 2009, Attachment Focused Family Therapy Workbook, 2011, and with John Balin, Brain-Based Parenting in 2012, and the Neurobiology of Attachment Focused Therapy in 2016. And he's written many featured articles, all on his website, www.theddpnetwork.org. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Dan, and thank you very much and give you a very hearty welcome. We really appreciate having you with us today.
Well, thank you, Pat. Thanks for your efforts. You messed up, though. This is my latest book.
Oh, what's it say?
I'm not going to do everything.
The Little
you,
Book
Pat.
of Attachment. I did not know about that book.
Yeah, it came out last year. I'm happy about it. It's a big little book. It's to get people to read it, so we called it a little book, even though it got big. So I wanted to change it to the big little book, and the publisher did not like my perspective, we'll call it. So it's still the little book. But the idea was to write this book for people, more professionals than parents, but parents are happy with. It's to convince professionals that attachment, professionals who deal with mental health issues like therapists and counselors and special ed people, social workers, that attachment is a really great guiding principle about understanding and then having interventions that facilitate kids who have been traumatized to develop well again. And because they often miss that, they think, well, it is not a, quote, attachment disorder, so then attachment is irrelevant, when in fact it's relevant for just about any sort of psychological struggle a person has, for good reasons. And we make the point in the book that there's about 30,000 studies now of attachment, showing why from birth to death is a key motivating factor in human development. And there are three, you're not here to hear these 30,000 studies. You'll quickly turn off the link. You say, big, I'm spending my Saturday night. Oh, it's Friday night, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to spend tomorrow with my grandson, and I'm anticipating already, looking forward to seeing my grandson. Where was I? Yeah, you don't want the 30,000 studies, but the three key things that attachment, kids who have a secure attachment are better than other kids in three major areas. Number one is having satisfying, enjoyable, reciprocal relationships with other people, whether they be your parents, your siblings, your peers, your teachers, any other person. they are just much better at it than kids who have attachment struggles. And I don't mean the kids who have severe trauma, like many of us focus on and work with. I mean kids who are just struggling with, they may have an avoidant attachment pattern. They sort of diminish the importance of relationships in their life, or they sort of cling to parents too much. They don't know how to develop autonomy that well and rely on themselves very well. So they wobble in their attachment patterns. They have more difficulty having relationships in general, not necessarily attachment relationships, but any relationships. So number one. Number two is kids with secure attachments are very good at regulating their emotional states and their cognitive states. They're better at regulation. So anger doesn't become rage then. Fear doesn't become terror. Sadness doesn't become despair. They have a thermostat for emotions. They're able to stay in the middle, which is good. I mean, being able to regulate your emotions and not overreact to stuff. And they're very good with that. They also can regulate their thinking. So they're not likely to get the ADHD diagnosis because they can stay focused. They can concentrate. They can stay with the one theme for quite a while, focus their attention on things. So they're pretty good at that too. And the third bit is they can reflect better than kids without attachment problems. What does reflect mean? Sort of a common sense thing, but the therapy people, psychology people, consider it specifically to the ability to be aware of your inner life or what you think. So I could say, what are you thinking? They know. What do you feel? And they know. They can tell. They have words for their inner life. They know what they wish. They know their perceptions. They know their values. They know their judgments. They're very good at communicating what's going on inside to other people. The kids with attachment problems tend not to be very good at that. They don't have words for their inner life very well. So when we say to them, use your words, it's somewhat shaming because they often don't have words. Even if they've memorized words that people have given them, they don't come out of their experience and they don't fit. So when you say, why'd you do that? They honestly say, I don't know. Even though it's real obvious why they did it, they just don't have the words. So security, kids with attachment security are good with that. They can reflect, they can regulate, and they can relate. The 3 R's of why attachment is so important. Oh, and there's a 4th R, I should just add, 3 plus 1. The 4th R is relationship repair. They're reasonably good when there's a problem in a relationship, helping, participating, fixing the problem. So after a conflict, they're reasonably good at letting a parent initiate a repair. The kind of parent going over and saying, are you all right? You were kind of angry at me. I was kind of angry with you. Yeah, we got an issue here because doing that is something we're going to have to figure out how to help you to stop because, well, actually, you're in trouble now. But I love you. You're my kid. So, so basically, repair says the relationship is bigger than the conflict, bigger than the problem. The relationship is, we sort of get this in relationships with partners between adults. We call it a relationship that's for better or for worse, a committed relationship. Well, a kid who is securely attached really gets that. My relationship with my parents is for better or for worse, and they trust it that I can mess up, I could do something wrong, and I'm not going to get kicked out of the house. I'm not going to be abandoned. I'm not going to get beat up. It's for better or for worse. Very important that we sometimes take for granted because, well, I did when I was a kid. I took for granted. I was in trouble a reasonable amount. No need to go into the various things that I did that my parents were not too excited about, but I never had any doubts about their commitment to me. Mm-hmm. That we'd get through this together. I might be grounded for a while. I might lose certain things. I might have to go and do a few apologies to a few people, but we'd get through it together because the relationship would always be there. Well, if I'm a traumatized kid and if I've entered foster care, I will not have that trust. Now we got a major problem. So many kids who have been traumatized in relationships by their primary caregivers, so often it's their parents and maybe others too. There's all kinds of family setups and dynamics, but my primary caregiver has abused me. The risk is I'm going to start to mistrust caregivers, mistrust any authority, mistrust any adult, and because they violated my trust. Babies at birth trust, sort of a given. I'm a baby, I trust you. You will meet my needs. So I cry and you come to me and you cuddle me and you feed me and you keep me warm and all those things that babies take for granted until the trust is violated. Now, a parent has a hard day and doesn't quite get there in time, or is in a bad mood, or whatever. We're not perfect, and sometimes we're not consistently there. Babies are okay with that. Babies learn how to adapt to, once in a while a parent isn't on their A game, and once in a while it's not as you want. They get that. But when it's severe and consistent, persistent mistrust develops from abuse and neglect, and those kids then go to it. My good friend Pat mentioned a book, The Neurobiology of Attachment Focused Therapy, that I wrote with my good friend John Balin, a psychologist in Wilmington, Delaware. Great fellow. And if Pat wants to have somebody come be a guest speaker in person, I'm sure John would hop in his car, and it's not too far from Wilmington to New York, a lot further for me, but anyway, why am I telling you this? A number of times during this hour and a half I'll be saying that because I lost the plot. It reminds me of my granddaughter a number of years ago when she was a little girl. She's 13 now. She is definitely not a little girl. If I suggest in any way she still has a lot of growing up to do, she looks upon me with disdain. I'm an old man who knows nothing about this mature 13-year-old. Why am I telling you that? Oh yeah, because I was with her when she was about 1 or 2. We were outside in the grass. We were playing, sort of crawling around in the grass and looking for ladybugs. And she came across something, and then she wanted to tell me about it. She got really excited. And I says, "Hey, kid." And she comes over and she just starts, da, 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 and she gets so excited she couldn't talk. And I said, "Take your time. It's all right. It's all right." And then she calms down, and then she looked at me. She looked puzzled. Then she burst into laughter. And I said, "What's so funny?" And she said, "Pop." She calls me Pop, still does. "Pop, I forget what I was talking about." It was so cool, because that was probably the first time in her life that happened to her, that she actually forgot what she was talking about. And I said, "No worries, sweetie. It happens to me every day." It's no big deal. And it doesn't happen to you very often. So you're in good shape. So then we went back to what we were doing, and she eventually remembered what she was talking about. I have no idea why I'm talking about that. I'm sorry, Pat. Pat's starting to think, why did I invite this guy? Where were we? Trust. Yeah. Okay. Trust, mistrust. That's a problem, because the kids have gone to, oh yeah, John Balin, my friend from Delaware. He calls it Plan B. If you've been hurt too much when you're young by your primary caregivers, you go to Plan B, which is to take care of yourself. You rely on yourself. You don't rely on other people. Attachment is about relying on somebody when you need help, when you're in distress. Babies do it naturally until they've been violated sufficiently that they no longer trust, they no longer rely on another person, and then they rely on themselves. Well, if you're 6 months old, or 1 year, or 2 years, or 3-year-olds, you're in trouble if you have to rely on yourself, right? I mean, your skills aren't that best, aren't the greatest. So what do you usually do if you rely on yourself? Number one, you try to make stress go away. You could do that by actually you start to dissociate. Little kids start to go away from bad experiences, not even register, and they don't notice things. They don't cry because they actually don't feel the fear or the pain. They make it go away, and they stop crying. that some of the saddest foster kids I ever worked with are the ones who just didn't cry. They're 2 years of age and they don't cry anymore. It's not worth it. It causes more pain. When you allow yourself to feel the pain and you cry, crying will make you feel the pain. Will sort of express the pain. So it's better just to numb yourself from the pain. And in fact, you will start numbing yourself. And you go to plan B in the dissociative. So you will socially, emotionally numb yourself. There's a part of the brain that is good with that. When you're experiencing a lot of social pain, social rejection, lots of conflict, when it becomes habitual in your life, the brain gets pretty clever and it finds a way to numb yourself from that. And I was shocked when I first realized this. When I first read the first article, well, John made me read it. I'd go to John's house so we could discuss stuff and do some training in Delaware. And he would teach me about how the brain worked in the morning before we had breakfast. And if I didn't remember what he told me, he didn't feed me breakfast. He was a tough teacher. He's a mean man. So I had to remember. Well, one of the mornings he says, in the anterior cingulate cortex, which is sort of right behind the prefrontal cortex on the front of your brain, in the middle, halfway down. So we're talking behind your forehead, not right on the front of it, but deep further inside. That part of your brain is good at suppressing social emotional pain. And what it does, it transmits a bit of opioids. You start medicating with opioids, self-medicating, to numb yourself. And now the theory is that if that happens too much when you're little, then you're going to develop a habit of numbing yourself under pain with opioids. And the danger of it is going to be greater than if you never had to go that in terms of because you had safe relationships. Okay, so those are two options. Another option is to avoid people. So the kids don't engage, don't look at you, don't talk to you, don't want to be touched, don't want to be hugged. They just leave me alone, leave me alone. And by darn it, I definitely don't want you to comfort me. Because comfort will make me really trust you, and I don't want to do that. Comfort will move me into starting to rely on you. And the kids don't want to rely. They don't want to be vulnerable. So then the kids are often not sad. It's much better to be mad than sad. So the kids often go into sadness, into anger. One time I was sitting with John. He says, "I know why you're a good therapist, Dan." And I said, "Why, John?" And I'm telling you guys, so you know why I'm a good therapist. He says, "You're a good therapist because you're good at making kids sad." So I want to put that on my tombstone. Dan knows how to make kids sad. I'm so proud of it. But actually, he's right. Because the kids, when they don't get sad, what do they do with frustration? They get angry. They get frustrated. If you're never sad, you never need comfort, and they don't want comfort. They don't want anybody to comfort them. They don't want the cuddles. They don't want the sort of the gentle, soothing words. They don't want the empathy. They don't want to be sad. So they run away from sadness all the time into being this tough guy attitude and the angry attitude. So after a while, they get good at intimidating people. And so they determine whether or not I can control you, so you let me off and let me do what I want. Because if you do something mean to me by not letting me have something, I will do something mean to you. So after a while, some adults will be intimidated by that and give in to the kids and avoid things, let the kids have what they want rather than be intimidated. And you really understand why a parent may need to do that, especially when moving into adolescence. These can be frightening kids, and they could be bigger than me, and they could be very impulsive. And another thing they get these are all survival skills. Another one is manipulation. They get very good at manipulating people. Why would they manipulate? Well, because they don't trust that you will meet their needs without being manipulated. You will not do it willingly. You will not do it because you put their needs first. You will do it because they trick you somehow into doing it. And then, so they get good at it. And a problem becomes parents get annoyed with them because they manipulate it all the time. And my comment is, if they didn't learn how to manipulate, they might be dead now. That was the survival skill way back in the day. And so we have to respect them. When they start to trust, they will manipulate less. They will intimidate less. They will avoid less. And they will allow comfort and support more. Over the years, Pat says it's 40. It's only 13, actually. No, it is 40. Yes. And Pat is, well, he's probably a bit younger than me, a bit.
Not much, you're right.
Anyway, over the years, I found out, I was often amazed at one thing. It did not matter who was the primary caregiver. It did not matter who was a disciplinarian. The mother figure got it a lot harder than the father figure. The kids hated women. Why would they go after the mother, even if dad was a primary caregiver, even if he gave more of the nurturing, even if he was the main disciplinarian, whatever, they'd still be more angry at the mother than the father. Didn't matter their history either in terms of who abused them, their mother or their father. They often gave the mother the harder time. Why? And it's because the mother evoked in them a desire to be nurtured. And they don't want that. They're going to keep the mother angry with them all the time, and they'll have reasons to be angry at the mother all the time to avoid the nurturing problem. Fathers are more casual about the nurturing thing. You don't want it? It's all right. Let me know if you change your mind. These are stereotypes, certainly. There is exceptions to that. But in general, that's often the point that I saw is the kids could not be vulnerable. And moms, often they would engage them in a way and the kids would start feeling vulnerable and they get angry and get upset because they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want, that makes them weak and makes them like a baby. I'm sorry here, I shouldn't do this, it's a little rude, but it's the mother of my grandson. And when she texts me, I have to reply or she gets angry with me. And she may not let me be with my grandson. So just take a second here.
That's okay.
Thank you, Pat. I don't know if everyone agrees with you.
It's all right.
Oh, you're right. You're the boss.
It is about attachment and relationships after all.
That's right. You're right, Juliet. Yep.
Who said that?
Family is
Juliet?
the most important thing.
Who said that?
Juliet.
I don't see her.
Juliet, you're hiding your face. There she is.
There she is. Hi, Juliet. Thank you for the support. I needed that because I wasn't sure if Pat was being genuine. Okay, where were we? We were talking about, oh yeah, the being vulnerable, being sad, and the kids are just afraid to be sad. They don't want to need anybody to take care of them. That is a very big challenge for a parent. When I am working with a family and the kid starts to get vulnerable in the office, it's sort of like the parents sign up for another year. It gives a reason for all this hard work you're doing. It really does. The hard work is hard. And if it doesn't seem like you're getting anywhere, all this for nothing, the kid isn't changing, the kid doesn't want help, you feel like a servant. And yeah, it's just very, very difficult. So if I'm able to help a child to be vulnerable and they allow the parent to comfort them, intuitively parents know they're getting through to the kid and that there's a much better chance this kid's going to make it, that he will rely on the parent in a healthy way to learn the things that he needs to learn how to do. Okay, if we go back a little bit on this trust thing, which I say is very, very important. What don't they trust about you? You could say that they don't trust. Well, we have Catherine talking to her child there. They're having a good time. Catherine's probably going to try to convince her child to do what I tell Forget to do. I'm sorry, Catherine. You can keep chatting away with your child. I won't comment on it anymore. Where was I? Pat, you're gonna have to take notes or
I
something.
know I am going to have to take better notes. You're absolutely right.
Trust.
Thank you for that. Who said trust?
Pittsburgh.
Chester.
Chester. Thank you, Chester. I
You're
knew
welcome, sir.
I knew you had my back. Okay. What don't they trust? Okay, so forget the behavior. That's sort of too obvious. Often they don't trust your motives. Why do you say no, they can't have dessert? Why do you say no, they can't visit a friend? Why do you say they have to do their chores? Well, I knew why. My parents thought it was in my best interest or the best interest of the family. I might disagree with them. I don't see the need for dessert if I haven't, why I have to give up dessert just because I don't want the potatoes. I was raised in an Irish, pretty strong Irish thing. We had potatoes, so many potatoes. Oh, it was overwhelmingly difficult, those darn potatoes. But if I didn't eat the darn potatoes, I didn't get my dessert. We even had potatoes with spaghetti. I mean, that's really sad. when you got that Irish background, you just get, it's a problem. So, but I trusted my parents' motives. I trusted they were doing this because they thought it was best for me or best for the family. But if I've been abused and neglected, I really don't trust the motives of my parents. Kids will speak really, really honestly when I'm able to help them define their words and discover why they're so upset with their parents. They'll look at the parent and say, I don't believe you. I know you're doing it to make me unhappy. And they truly believe that. Because discipline, limits, expectations to do things that they don't consider to be fun, they don't enjoy doing it. So they're unhappy. And you know that. And you still tell them to do it or not do it. Therefore, you're doing it on purpose to make them unhappy. And they believe that. Now you see why that it bothers them then and why they don't trust you. If every time routine discipline becomes another test that you fail in their point of view because you don't do things to make them happy. You remind them of their abusive parents or neglectful parents who did not feed them because they got angry at them or something, or who locked them in their bedroom until noon because the parents were sleeping and didn't want them to bother them or something, all kinds of stuff. Those kids didn't trust their parents for good reason. But routine discipline, you don't trust your parents, or I hate to say it, but often that's the problem. They don't trust your motives. They don't get it. And when I help the child to say that, sometimes it's an eye-opener because the kid is not doing that as an excuse. They truly, truly mean it. Sometimes they're crying and they'll say, why? Why do you want me to be unhappy? Why don't you like me? And that's another assumption they have about your motive. You're doing it because you don't like them, because you want them to be miserable and you don't give them exactly what they want. So anyway, we have problems there with mistrust, and it doesn't go away easily by saying, well, I didn't abuse you, by cognitively trying to say, I'm not the abuser, don't take it out on me, or I haven't done that, or you've been living with me for a year and a half, get over it. That doesn't work. The part of the brain that is, sometimes I get frustrated with professionals and human beings, all of us and myself too once in a while. We give these kids cognitive coping skills that don't work when they're in distress. I don't know if you know about anger management training. They work best when you're calm. They truly do. They're very effective when you're calm. When you need it the most, they just don't work. Because it's the part of the brain that when you're under a lot of distress, like when you're enraged, that part of the brain is not working. The subcortex is involved in fight, flight, and freeze. and it's way the top, it's your hairline, it's way up there. Well, even Chester has one up there, where his hairline would be if he had hair. It is, oh man, again, I lost the plot. Excuse me, that was a sidelight on anger management or something, and cognitive skills on using reason for kids, thinking that's going to get through to them. Because we're talking about a sense of self and a sense of other that grew out of the original. I don't know where you first, if you know where you first got your sense of self, like who am I? At birth, babies don't have much of a sense of self. They live from moment to moment, impulse to impulse, sensation to sensation, smell to smell, just really, they don't organize the sense of self at birth. I'm sorry, they do organize it, but it takes time. It takes a while, a lot of repetition, a lot of certain things, and a lot of input from a parent. Parents tell the kid who they are. So if I'm with my kid and I'm interested in my kid, and I show my interest in my face and my voice, what does the kid think? I am interesting. The parent shows love, I'm lovable. The parent shows joy, I'm enjoyable. I'm clever. Qualities in the kids' development of sense of self comes from the parents' experience of them that they communicate non-verbally. Words have nothing to do with it here at this level. And this happens thousands and thousands of times that a parent is communicating their experience of their child, that his child is using as the organizing principle for who I am. Well, if my parents are not like most parents have what researchers call positive delusions. Most parents think their kid is the most incredible kid in the world. And then, and one mother she went to a mother's group with a lot of babies, and she says, "Don't tell us so about this. I feel awful." I said, "What's the problem?" "Well, when I go to the mother's group, I'm with all the mothers. I'm looking around, all the babies, all the mothers, and I'm thinking, thank God I'm not one of those mothers who have a mediocre baby." How rude is that? So don't tell anybody. Well, they compare the other babies to their own baby, and the other ones always come up lacking. They're mediocre. Well, anyway, researchers call those positive delusions. However, they go on to say that if the parent doesn't have positive delusions, kids don't thrive. Kids need to have their parents see something wonderful about them. And I think the researchers just don't know what they're talking about in terms of words, because they call those delusions, and they're not delusions. Parents know the spirit of their child and experience the spirit of their child more than the spirit of other people's children. That's it. It's a reality. It's a quality in their child that they just fall in love with, that they see. It's not a delusion at all. You just don't see it in the other kids because they're not your kid. Okay, so that's wonderful most of the time. If we had reasonably okay parents, then we got those sense of self based on these positive qualities. And, our parents slip once in a while, especially when we start to crawl and we're getting into trouble, and our parents have had a hard day and they've had enough and stuff, and they started losing their temper once in a while. Then, we get a bit neurotic and stuff. There's a few problems, but nothing major, because we still have that conviction that our parents see something special about us in spite of the problems. And so when that's the case, the kid still trusts, and the kid is willing and able to learn from the parent. When that's not the case, when the original sense of self which emerging is, I am bad, I am stupid, I'm not delightful, I'm not enjoyable, I'm not lovable, because that's the parent's experience, the parents who abuse and neglecting, that child is at risk then for a sense of self that is really limited, really negative, filled with shame, filled with fear. That sense of self is not going to trust anybody. And if I started to trust you, I know it's not going to have a good ending, because the more you get to know me, you're going to see underneath my facade, because I do know how to manipulate and pretend I'm good. and do what you want me to do. I don't feel like it, but I can know how to do it. But once I relax and start showing you who I really am, you're not going to love me at all. You're going to throw me away then. So I don't trust you. That the more you know me, the worse, the less you'll love me. Which often happens in a relationship. During that quote honeymoon, the kids do reasonably well, and it just goes downhill as the kid is increasingly convinced that you're getting to know me and you're going to love me less. And I'm not going to trust you anymore. I'm going to protect myself before you reject me. So then I'm going to be more challenging and more difficult, push you away even more. Okay, so what would I do about that? If one of you was in a therapy session with you and your kid were in a therapy session with me, what would I do? I'd ask you for what happened yesterday, and you'd tell me, well, yesterday was a reasonably hard day, Dan. Same old, but well, give me a specific. Well, I told him he would not be able to use his phone, whatever. He wouldn't be able to visit a friend. And what did he do? He swore at me. He called me a horrible name, ran to his room, and slammed the door. Okay, so that's the issue we're going to address today. I might not, but probably we will. Swearing at a parent is something that needs to be addressed for the sake of the child, the parent, the relationship. This is not good for the kid as much as for the parent, because kids have some awareness, and in life, swearing at your parent is something you're probably going to be ashamed of. So it's a rare kid who isn't ashamed of that. No matter how tough he is, he knows in his heart that's wrong. So for his sake, I have to get him to stop swearing at his parent. Forget the parent now, just for the kid. He can't swear at his parent. Not good. So I'm chatting with him. This is a bit off the topic, but I forgot to talk about this earlier. Pat distracted me. So I have to bring it in now. That lectures don't work with kids. Lectures, that monotone, serious, stern. You didn't do your chores before you went out, and now that I see it, and that really is not appropriate. You have to do your chores first, and there's going to be a consequence for that. Now help me understand what caused you to go out without doing your chores. So that long lecture thing that never works. We feel better at the end a little bit when the kid pretends it works, but just to make us feel good, so we'll shut up. But beyond that, it just doesn't work. Lectures are not good. In fact, neurologically, when you're giving a kid a lecture, their brain becomes defensive. The autonomic nervous system has there's a vagal nerve. It goes different parts of your body to your brain. Anyway, one of the threads of it is when you're under a situation of threat, you get defensive and you protect yourself. The other is you don't feel threatened and you're with another person and you're open and engaged with them. You're in a nice reciprocal relationship. You're listening, you're talking, you're influenced, you're influencing, you're influenced by. It's a nice thing. That's what we like in relationships. When you're feeling safe, that part of the autonomic nervous system is working. So you're learning from other people really well then, and you're contributing, you're giving and taking and sharing, taking turns. That's what it's about. But when you're defensive, that part isn't working. When you're defensive, you're protecting yourself. You're not learning anything about other than how to keep myself safe. So my point is that the researcher really focused on that. They gave kids lectures. Guess where their brain was? They were defensive. That's why they don't learn from lectures, because it makes you defensive. When somebody's stern with you and is mildly annoyed with you, you don't hear what's being said to you other than what you need to do to end the lecture. You don't learn the message here. So when I realized that, so if you're coming into my office for therapy with your kid, and meet with you alone and say, now swearing at you is not a good thing for you or the kid, and I will address it, but I won't give him a lecture. So you have to be ready for this and trust me. that I will talk about it in a very relaxed, rhythmic way, much as a person tells a story. Because storytelling facilitates in our brain a sense of openness to what we're hearing, a relaxed quality. If you know, the professional storytellers who make a living going around telling stories, forget the content, just listen to how they tell their stories. Watch their face and their gestures, their movements, but especially their voice, the prosody of their voice, the rhythms, the inflections, how they just use their voice like a musical instrument and move the kid right into the story in a very open and engaged way. So anyway, that's how I talk with kids when I talk to them about swearing at their parent. And I got to prepare the parent for that because they think it's suggesting it's not a major issue. It is a major issue, but I got to talk in a way that the kid will actually listen and learn. Otherwise, he won't. So if you were a parent, I'd say, trust me on this. I'm not going to minimize it. It is serious that he swears at you. But if I talk in a serious way, he won't listen. Keep swearing. I want him to stop swearing. Isn't that what you want? Yeah. Okay. So that's what we've got to do. Okay. So the kid comes in and I chat with him about, hey, he had a great day yesterday, wasn't it? Yeah. What do you think about that? What are they called? The Brooklyn basketball team, the Nets?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think about the great Nets? First time in their history, they might have a good team. Something good might come from Brooklyn for a change. I'm sorry for the people in Brooklyn. I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, you shouldn't have said that.
Sorry, Emily. Emily's shocked. Okay. So say this family's from Brooklyn. Well, and I know the kid likes basketball. What am I going to talk about? Swearing at your mother? No, he'll never talk with me about swearing at his mother. But I will talk about the Nets. And I'll get a rhythm going. We'll get a conversation. Conversations, the kids, another tangent. The kids don't know how to have conversations with anybody. It's either a monologue, it's a changing the topic, it's not talking at all, talking over you. Anyway, they make you crazy. They can't do the sharing, taking turns thing very well at all. So I got to facilitate their ability of conversation. So it's my job. So I start with something easy, the Nets. So we're chatting about, yeah, Kevin Durant, that guy, well, I hope he stays healthy because, man, that guy can play. Whoa, that is really cool how he does that. Yeah, and did you see that? Did you see the highlight the other day? Pretty cool. So you like it too. Yeah, well, I hope they go far this year. I hope they do. It'd be really cool if they do well in the playoffs, wouldn't it? Yeah, well, I'm glad. So you saw the game on Saturday. Great, because I hear on Sunday you had a hard time. Sundays didn't go as well Saturday, there's no Nets playing, and you had a big fight with your mom, and she, let me see, let me make sure I get this right. You had wanted to visit a friend, and she says you hadn't done some chores she had asked you to do, you hadn't gotten them done first, and then she says, no, we got to do that first. And you said, no, I want to play with a friend. You got angry about that. I want to play with my friend. She said, no, you got to do that first, and you can't play with your friend. And then you got so upset with her, you just swore at her. And well, I know the word, and we could use the word if you like, but we could just call it swearing. And you swore it again, and then she said, "You could better not talk that way to me, young man." And off you go to your room, and you slam the door. It was a hard time, really, really hard. Yeah. What's that about? No. Well, you do know. It was about your mom wanted to let you visit your friend, and you got so angry you swore. I wonder why you got that angry. No. Because I would get angry at my parents when they want to let me do stuff. I don't call swearing like that. That means you were really angry. I wonder why you were that angry. I don't know. You don't know much, do you? Is it hard not knowing things? Yeah, it must make your life a little confusing. You don't know stuff, but I could help you to figure that out. Let's figure that out now. Why would you be so angry at your mom she wouldn't let you visit a friend? I don't know. What could it be? Notice the storytelling. You got to build suspense. If you're doing a story, you got to really build suspense. And then the take home, you talk fast. And a kid will blurt out the first thing that comes to their mind, which tends to be close to their truth. So I'm there pausing and say, Wait a second. Why won't she let you play with your friend anyway? Why wouldn't she? And the kid will probably say something like, she doesn't care what I want. What I want's not important to her. Oh my gosh. If you got stuck with a mom who doesn't care about what you want, that's your mother. And if she doesn't care what you want, that'd be hard. I can see why you'd be quite angry about that. Not happy about the swearing bit, but I can see why it'd make you very angry if you got stuck with a mother who doesn't care about what you want. Now, some mothers, like Catherine's eyes are getting big. Some parents are afraid I want to agree with the kid. It's, when I say, but notice the if word. If you got stuck with a mother who doesn't let you do what you want, that would be hard. That's true, right? You don't agree with that. Now, you don't think you're the mother who does that, but the kid does. So I will affirm his experience. He experienced you as not caring about what he wants. If that's true, that makes his life hard, and I can understand why I'd be angry with you. I might not affirm the swearing, but I can understand the intense anger. So, oh my gosh, now I understand better why you got really, 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 really angry with your mom if she doesn't care about what you want. Wait a second, why won't she care about what you want? Because she doesn't care about me. Oh my gosh, you got stuck with a mother who doesn't care about you? That's how it seems to you? That'd be even more difficult if she doesn't. Wait a second, why won't she care about you? I'm not good enough. You're not good enough? No, I'm the bad one in the family. She thinks I'm the bad one. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Now he's ready for a bit of vulnerability. So I say, you just said something really, really important here, fellow. It seems to you that your mom thinks you're the bad kid. And if she thinks you're the bad kid, my gosh, that'd be painful. My gosh. You might even doubt how much she loves you if she thinks you're the bad kid. She doesn't love me as much as Johnny. Ah, you do have doubts then, don't you? So by the end of that conversation, the kid is now vulnerable. He's not angry. The meaning of the swearing is much deeper than the original anger. She won't let me play with my friend. It's into her motives, which he assumes to be her motives. I can't tell you how often is the thing that is getting in the way. He doesn't trust the motives of the parents. He puts everything into that. So I got a parent sitting there. So let's assume it was Catherine, who's relaxed now and realizes that I don't believe that her kid, that she really is a mother who thinks her son is bad. So I say, Catherine, you were really listening well to what your son said there. And he said something like this, and I'll pretend I'm him for a second. He said something like, yeah, I got angry with you yesterday. I got really angry. Yeah, I swear I do. You need to understand, I swear, because it seems to me that you just don't care what I want, because you don't care about me, because you think I'm the bad one in the family. I just get tired of it. Well, if he says something like that and I talk for him, Catherine, this is how I like you to respond. You're going to say something like this, or else I'll get angry with you, Catherine. She will say something like, oh my goodness, Brian, I didn't realize that that's what you thought. Thanks for telling me that. Now I understand why you got real angry. I don't want you to swear at me when you're real angry, but I want to understand why, and I have a much better understanding. You think that I said no because I don't care what you want. I don't care about you, and I'm disappointed in you and I think you're the bad kid. Oh my gosh, that's heavy. That's hard. That's so difficult. I understand why you're angry. That'd be very, very hard to trust me, wouldn't it? If you think that I think you're a bad kid and I don't care about what you want. Well, if mom really buys into this, that it's her motives that he has to start trusting, and she could say that, this is empathy we're talking about. If you don't trust me, that I want you to be happy, and I feel badly that you're going to be sad you can't play with your friends, but it's important that you get your chores done first, and I have to push that habit. And I'll support you around that and help you get your chores done. Anyway, if you can express that, the kid will probably be sitting there and staring, and it'll be rethinking your motives. The empathy will help him to feel at some point, well, maybe that's not her motive. Maybe she's telling the truth. It just is she wants me to learn to do my chores before I do my fun. Maybe she means it. Maybe she feels bad that it's hard for me. I don't particularly like to do my chores before my fun, and it's very difficult, and she understands it. Maybe Maybe she means it. And then the next time he doesn't swear. Or, well, that might be a bit optimistic. The third time, or the fourth time, or the fifth time after that. I used to predict how many times, but I'm pretty persistent, and I'm not the one getting sworn at or hit or stolen from or things like that. So it's easy for me, because I'm not in the front line. So I get how hard it is. But the sad bit is when the brain learns one thing for survival, it tends to be reluctant to give it up. And you're saying you don't have to use that anymore because I'm not going to traumatize you and you can't trust me. I'm not so sure I'm going to believe you. So it's going to take a lot of repetitions often before the kid actually starts changing and believing the parent. With this one adopted boy, he was 5, he was adopted about 3, and is moving 3, 4, and 5. His anger and violence was getting worse, and he starts on a regular basis. He would hit his adoptive mother. So we were dealing with that. Hey, you got angry with your mom this week, so you hit her. Next week, hey, you got so angry this week, hit her twice. Next week, you got angry with your mom again this week, you hit her. What was that about? I don't know. What could it be? I don't know. Let's figure it out. Okay. So we figured it out. So over a 3-month period of time, we figured out about 20 reasons why he was angry with his mom. Well, probably only about 6 or 7 that are repeated. Some of them were repeat ones. Each time the kid would cry at the end of our exploration. But the next time the similar thing happened, he forgot. And he went back to not believing her again. And it was all genuine. It wasn't that he was faking it. He really forgot what he was learning about his mother's motives in the therapy. It took enough repetition. Then he stopped hitting her. Hallelujah. So we're all happy inside. But you can't get too excited because that'll put pressure on him, and he tends to get worse when you get too excited. And so I have to ask parents, calm down now, calm down. Don't get hopeful here. Let's be usually say, I want the kid to consistently change their behavior over a 3-month period of time before I give it any credibility as lasting. So don't be cynical about it, but just be, oh, good. Well, that's glad. Yeah, good for you. It's more comfortable when you don't hit me, isn't it? It's better for me and it's better for you. It's hard when you hit me and I get really tough on you. So anyway, I got to tell you the end of the story. He's not hitting her anymore, so we're thinking of not, because other behaviors, he's improving in a lot of ways. And so he's moving closer to 7, and we're meeting about once a month, and we're thinking of winding down maybe every 6 months. So his adoptive mother and his adoptive father have a biological child who's 10, a girl who has never done a thing wrong in her life, is a great athlete, very popular, great musician, horrible big sister for my boy. He can't compete with her. How could he? She's perfect in every way. So in the middle of the dinner, he came in all excited. And he was so excited he couldn't tell me what he's excited about. And I said, can your mom tell me? Yeah. So the mom tells me that in the middle of the meal, the older sister, we'll call her Katie, said to the mother with a bit of attitude, hey, Mom, how come we always have to have string beans? For this girl, that's major. That's sort of the slippery slope of oppositional defiance coming up. Because she doesn't complain. She's just so sweet. But she said, how come we always have to have string beans? And before the mother can answer, my boy, we'll call him George, George said, I wonder what's bothering Katie. The same thing I had said to him for the last 3 months. I wonder what's bothering George. He says, I wonder what's bothering Katie. She's on the hot seat now. So he was all happy. And he has a big smile on his face, and they all look at him, the parents and the Katie. And he smiles and says, let's figure it out. Which is the same thing I said to him for 3 months. Let's figure it out. You're clever. I'm clever. We could do this. So I was so excited. I said, George, you are an incredible kid. You've learned so many things so well. You know what? You're so good at this. I think what you could do is you can have a job helping me. You'll be my assistant to help other kids learn these things. And you could probably work with me and I'll pay you for the next 40 years. You'll be my helper. And I'm sitting there with a smile, content hiring him, the 7-year-old boy, to work with me to help other kids for 40 years. And George thinks about it. Then he finally, in a quiet little voice, says, I want to be a fireman. Oh, right. You can be a fireman. Okay. I'm sorry, Pat. I am not talking about the things you told me to talk about.
Hey, this is great. Everybody's loving it.
Are we sure?
Oh, yeah. I'm getting a lot of great comments.
Even Catherine is okay. She's forgiven me.
Oh, you can tell Catherine's okay.
Emily forgave me from Brooklyn. Well, Chester's okay. Well, he's my bro from Pittsburgh, so he would be fine. I can say anything. Go Steelers.
Oh, he loved that.
Okay, where are we here? Okay, so given that, when I work with families, because years ago I realized with these traumatized kids who don't trust their families, they don't trust their parents, and these were primarily foster and adopted kids. There were some kids who were in a diversion program, so the high-risk families. I wasn't able to help them as much as I could the foster and adopted kids, simply because the high-risk parents, often I could not engage them as easily because they didn't trust me. They had the same issue as a kid. They didn't trust me. And so it was hard for me to win them over in enough a way that they would allow me to guide them in terms of raising their kids differently. Anyway, so in my work with foster and adoptive families, I often am told that the kid's trauma, I didn't cause that trauma. It was done by other people before he came to live with me. And I raised the other kids well, and they don't have these problems. I'm raising them the way I was raised, and I don't have these problems. So really, there's no need for me to change. And with empathy, I have to say there is a need for you to change, because probably you and your other kids were not traumatized in the same way. Probably you trusted, he doesn't trust. Probably your development, you could reflect better, you could regulate better. Your ability to know how to do reciprocal relationships was probably stronger. So I have to ask you to sort of modify some of your parenting in order to be more successful. And that may not be what you signed up for, but I have to ask you to do it, because otherwise I'm afraid you're going to fail. Regular parenting that is great for kids who trust often falls flat with kids who don't trust. Routine discipline is experiences abuse and neglect. Routine comfort is rejected. Being able to have conversations is lead to resolutions and repair of relationships. Often doesn't happen. So I have to ask you to try other things. What are the things I'm going to be asking? We can't forget the need to connect while we're correcting. Before, during, and after a correction, we have to connect. We have to find a way to get a relationship. Some parents will say, well, give him a relationship when he's good. Well, we'll never become good then. He needs the unconditional relationship as a context in which he's likely to be bit motivated in order to learn how to become good, to meet you halfway, to realize, I have to help you to realize that some of your skills need sort of an upgrade because of who he is. And he has to realize a lot of his skills need an upgrade because he has to learn how to have a life based on relationships, reflecting and regulating and repairing, which he doesn't think he needs that. He does. He's desperate for it, and he doesn't think he needs it. So we have to find a way to help him. But I can't find a way to help him unless you're willing to trust me. And when I ask you to take a different approach to discipline, for example, instead of being angry, like I was raised with anger with discipline. There's not the end of the world. And my mother or father say, hey, get over here. Why'd you do that? You know you're not supposed to do that. Now, what was going on? It was life. And so the lecture would be there, I would or would not get a consequence, depending on what it was and how many times they had done it. Then it was over. And our relationship was good. We went back to life, and just a little blip that was just sort of a fact of life. The connection was always there, in spite of the fact the correction. So, but these kids aren't connected, so I have to find a way to build a connection with kids who in order to make the corrections more effective and generate more trust. So I have to ask a parent to inhibit the typical annoyance that we often have when we utilize discipline, and practice, inhibit, learn how to do it with empathy. Come here, son. I know you really want to see your friend, and I'm sorry to say you can't see him now because you haven't done your chores. Oh, yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I can see it's really upsetting you. You really want to see your friend. And I have to say you can't. Oh. I'm giving up my contact with my daughters for you. Which means the contact with my grandchildren for you. Now that's the sacrifice. Anyway, so it takes practice, but if you keep the relationship out of the discipline and you really look at the kid and say, son, you really want to see your friend, and I get it, and I'm sorry to say you can't see him now. Oh, yeah, I can see you're angry about it. You're upset about it. And I feel badly that I have to insist on it. You don't see him now because I know how much you wanted to do that. I do think it's so important to learn this habit that we're working on in terms of your responsibility in the family. That's why I have to say you can't do it now. Yeah, anything I can do to help you? Let me see my friend. Can't do that one. Any other ideas? You're firm, you're clear, but you're not angry. You're not, well, if you had just done what I told you. Now, healthy kids are fine with that. When kids trust, it's just who your parents are. It's just part of the, come to the territory. They grumble and moan and groan. They're angry at what you do, but you trust them. They still love you, and they won't abuse you or throw you away. So anyway, that would be one example. I wrote down here because maybe it's of value because it's sort of the things that Bill told me this I had to talk about. Oh, I did say some of these things. It's safe to be sad. Yeah. When parents ask for which consequences will work, I usually say, well, actually, we don't know what consequences will work until we know why he's doing it. Doesn't matter why, he just needs to stop doing it. But if we don't know why he's doing it, I might give a consequence that makes it worse. Some consequences need to be positive. If he's doing it because he's experiencing a great loss of something or a great sense of inadequacy or failure, and I now know that, and I can help him to address the sense of failure, and the sense of failure gets smaller, that's the consequence. This is wonderful. I don't have to do anything negative. The consequence, the purpose is to help the behavior go away. Well, if the reason for the behavior is he feels like he's a failure, one kid was convinced when his stepdad was home late from work, he was going to be abandoned. His stepdad may never come home. So whenever his stepdad was late for work, even though cognitively he knew, some nights he worked late, he always had a big problem at the dinner table. Other than that, he was fine. So the parents were throwing all these consequences thing. Mom got really tough on him at the dinner table. When stepdad came home, he got really tough on him, and nothing was working. They asked me what to do about it. Sort of more consequences. If sometimes I wonder, a parent is taking the bike away for a week as a consequence. It didn't work, then they take it away for a month. That's not working. The kid yells, and then they take it away for 4 months. I say, how about 4 years? Do you think that will work? I tend to get cynical sometimes, but we don't know what else to do, so you just add on consequences. The stepdad thing, finally in the therapy, he was able to say, the first session, he was able to say, I'm afraid you're not going to come home. Well, he's abandoned by his father. Now he's afraid the stepfather is going to do the same thing. And it was so clear how scared he was of losing his stepfather that the consequence was on nights he worked late, stepfather would call and they'd have a little talk on the phone. He'd tell the boy when he was getting in. He'd suggest they do something for only 5-10 minutes after dinner. The boy was fine, no more problems at the dinner table. So that was a consequence. But I got to really slow parents down. They want a consequence when they don't know what the meaning of the behavior is. At the end of therapy, when I ask parents, what helps the most? I don't react to behavior anymore. I stop and make sense of it first, and then I know how to respond to it. I really agree with that. Another thing that I often recommend is, I call it mom time or dad time, which is unconditionally, the kid gets some time with you every day, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be a long time. It could be a short period of time. It's not earned, it's unconditional, and it's just fun. It's light, it's something you both might enjoy. It's going for a walk, it's playing a little game, it's, doing whatever, something you both like. And the parent would say, but yeah, it's the last thing in the world I want to do. And I said, then you need to do it. Because the kid knows you don't want to be with him. He's such a pain in the neck. And force yourself to do it, fake it. And so they do it. And then the parent will say, I told you I'd do it at 4 o'clock every day. I didn't want to do it, but I did it. 4:10, I was okay about it. 4:15, I was enjoying it. 4:20, I was really having a good time. And at 4:30 was done, I felt fine. And I was close to the kid again. I was actually disappointed we were done. And then I asked the kid, what do you think helped the most? It was that mom-dad time. I said, what was so helpful about that? Well, I was so convinced they hated me, but when they did that with me, then I realized they didn't hate me. After all, in spite of the conflicts we have, they did not hate me. So it sort of keeps us back in our default position of an unconditional time, even if it's 15 minutes a day. That can be a lifesaver to keep the relationship alive when you're going through the doldrums, when it's you're really struggling. Okay, that would be. Oh yeah, I was going to say, I got on a tangent. No surprise there. When parents want consequences, I say, okay, let's start with the basics. Most likely the consequence is going to be the most effective, more structure, more supervision. But how about a specific one for lying or breaking, or more structure, more supervision? And it's not a punishment. You're not a warden of a jail. This is a gift you're giving your kid. The fact that he does these persistent misbehaviors that don't seem to respond to specific consequences generally means he needs more structure and more supervision. Too much free time, too much ambiguous time. He gets into trouble when he has free time, makes him anxious. And he needs more of a routine in his life. He needs to settle in. It's amazing when a kid accepts that, he grumbles about it, he needs supervision, especially at first, until it becomes a habit. Then often they look forward to it, to a daily routine. Predictable things happen every day at a certain time, not rigid, but pretty firm. And it settles them, and they actually start to get into a routine, and then they don't fuss about it. A lot of kids, when you say, hey, bring the dirty dishes in with you, they all have a big fit. But if that's part of the routine, is to bring in the dirty dishes, that's your responsibility, and it becomes a habit, they don't mind. It's the unexpected requests that take them by surprise, that's when they have a big fight about it. Anyway, I often that's my first line of defense: more structure, more supervision, done as a gift, not as a punishment. And it's not that the kid settles down because he can't get away with it because you're watching him all the time. It's because you're close to him and you're in a decent mood. He's not in trouble. He's almost emotionally like a toddler. A lot of these troubled kids, emotional behavioral problems secondary to relational trauma. He's almost like a toddler emotionally, and he needs presence. somebody near him who's in a decent mood. He can sort of rely on you to help him stay regulated. Okay. Oh, yeah. The kid, and this is a pretty important thing. The kid does, a lot of what I said is not important, but this is. So pay attention. All right, I guess you're reasonably healthy people because most of you look like you're attentive. If you were your kid, you would immediately pick up a comic book or something when you say to pay attention. That's the last thing they would do then. Okay, the kid has done something wrong and then he says, I didn't do it. He clearly did. 17 witnesses. You have video proof he did it. I didn't do it. Well, it becomes almost comical, but they're so intense on it. They're actually distorting reality here. It's a delusional state. And you say, baloney, they know they did it. A lot of the times the kids actually convince themselves they don't do it, which is why they're so convincing. Pretty soon you doubt your own eyes because they're so convincing because they think they didn't do it because the shame. We're talking about shame. Traumatized kids, when you're traumatized by your own parents, when you're young, you feel it's your fault, you feel you're a bad kid, you're not lovable, you don't deserve anything. Then when you misbehave, you don't face it because you think it's just more evidence that you're a bad kid who's not lovable. That's really, really hard. It's hard for the kid, clearly, and for you, it's hard. Those pervasive lying that the kids do, it's really shame-based. He knows you're not going to beat him up for doing it. He's running from the truth. He's convinced you will think he's a bad kid. So he's desperate for you to think he did not do it, so you don't think he's a bad kid, because he's right on the edge. So the kid is starting to make progress. He's starting to make progress, and sure enough, his lying isn't as intense. He doesn't lie as much. And then magical words come out of his mouth that make me think this kid's going to make it. He looks at me and he looks at his parents and he says, I think you're wasting your time. I don't think I'm ever going to change. There is something wrong with me. My birth parents were right. I'm a bad kid. I don't think I'll ever change. And they say it and it breaks your heart and they mean it. That is progress. They're facing their horrible truth. They think they're bad and unlovable. That means they're really, really safe enough to face what to them is a rock solid fundamental reality about who they are as people. Okay, so inside am I happy when I hear that. That's what John says, I like kids to be sad. Because it's a sign of big progress. Now I have one thing I'm anxious about. The parents sitting in the room. Because they're going to mess it up. What are they going to say? You're not a bad kid. You just made a mistake. You had a hard life growing up. You could learn this. You're a good kid. And what does the kid do? Shuts down, doesn't believe you, and then proves you wrong. It gets worse. If you challenge shame, you argue with kids who are expressing their shame, it's not going to make it better. And I understand why you would, because it's so painful to hear when the kid is facing that horrible reality, psychological reality. They think it's objective, it's not, but they think it is their shame. And you so much want to rescue them from that. Therapists I supervise do it. Boy, I yell at them. You're not the parent. You ought to learn better than that. Cut it out. You don't rescue a kid who's expressing his shame. It's probably not necessary to tell you, you don't agree with them either. Just so we know, you don't agree with him when he expresses his shame either. You express empathy for him. You look at him, you say, my gosh, that must be so painful. If when you do something wrong, you think it's because you're a bad kid. Oh, no wonder it's hard to talk about it. No wonder it's hard to tell the truth about it. That would be so difficult for you. So hard. It must have taken so much courage to tell me about it, that's how you see it. You think you're a bad kid when you do something wrong. So your empathy is going to cause doubts in their self-concept, because clearly, if you're talking like that, you don't agree. That's not your perception of them, or you wouldn't be saying that. So then I stay then with curiosity. I just say, do you feel that way often? Is it anything you do wrong? Are there times you don't feel that way? When was the first time you thought that's the reason why you do things you shouldn't do or make a mistake? Can you recall that? How do you handle a feeling like that? You try not to think about it? It's a very painful feeling to have, that you're a bad person, bad kid, not worth life and stuff. It'd be very, very difficult. So at the end of that discussion, what's the kid's going to say? What do you think? They'll really want to know. And I'll say, well, I don't experience you as a bad kid. You have a hard time in relationships. It's hard to trust your parents. It's hard to let go of some of the horrible things that happened to you when you were little. But I don't see you as a bad kid. I see you as making mistakes. I see you as having courage to fight this. You haven't given up. I look forward to the day that you see in you what I see in you, because that's not a bad kid. I see other qualities in you. I don't think you see them yet, do you? So that's how I will help the kid address his shame and start to gradually, step by step, for the shame to go down, to get smaller. But you can't push them out of it or drag them out of it. It just doesn't work. Like when a kid's afraid, oh, you're not afraid. It's the same thing. Or he's angry, you're not angry. You know, you have to validate, you have to let him know you experience his experience. You understand, you experience that he's experiencing it that way. You may not experience it that way. That's different. This is his experience. He's a bad kid. That often is a big step in their moving forward and letting go of their shame. And if they can let go of the shame, they're going to start to learn. Shame is connected to all kinds of things. It's underneath a lot of, number one is lying. You made that point. Number two, it's often underneath making excuses, blaming others, minimizing what they do. And it's often connected to rage. When you hold them accountable, when you say, you did do it, and they scream at you like, you never believe me, you never believe me. Well, we have 17 witnesses. Actually, that's one of the main reasons I don't believe it. The rage is often a defense against shame. Shame is a very painful emotion. And that's the biggest one. Terror from trauma is hard to work with, but shame is harder to work with, because it's a real core sense of self that I got from my parents who were abusing me. I have to help them address that shame so it gets smaller. And the best way is empathy, followed by some non-judgmental curiosity. Okay. I've been ignoring the chat. There's 57 chats.
A lot of just wonderful comments agreeing with you. I have one question from the chat if you're up for it. So you just let me know when.
I'm ready. I'm ready, Pat. Bring it on.
All right. So somebody in regard to connecting while correcting, this person had heard that she had heard that there's almost a ratio of 4 positive messages to every 1 correction. What do you think about that formula?
I mean, it's a nice guide. I'm not going to get out my calculator, and I don't want to make it too much of a technique, but I want to reflect at the end of the day, were most of my interactions negative? If the majority were negative, conflict, I gotta find a way. The danger with 4 to 1 is I might end up starting to praise. Praise, rational praise, judgmental praise tends to make kids defensive. It has to be experiential. It has to come out of our experience. So if I say, gosh, that was fun. I'm really glad we did this. That's sort of praise, isn't it? It's sort of, I really had a great time with you today. I'm glad we did it. We have to do it more often. That was a lot of fun. Or I was amazed at how you were able to handle that. Or look at that drawing, it's so cool. That's all experiential. That's great. If we call that praise, fine. But the judgmental thing, like I decide if that's good or not, or good sitting, good sharing, good talking, good smiling. Oh man, thank goodness my parents never praised me that way. It drive me crazy. And but that's my caution about that, Pat, that it might get to be a rational exercise and the kids will get defensive and they'll just turn you off. Imagine if your partner did that to you. You'd be pulling your hair out.
You mentioned something very interesting when you use, this would be
I wasn't talking about you, Chester. I apologize that if I was glancing in your way at the time. I did not mean you, Chester. Yes, go ahead, Pat.
The idea of a technique versus an attitude. In
Yes.
our reframing class, we teach about pace all the time. And sometimes we get caught up in pace being a technique, but
Yes.
it's actually an attitude. I was wondering
Okay.
if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's my way of being. If it's a technique, if a parent says it didn't work, I say, well, you're not using it well then, because it's not a part of who you are. It's my way of relating. And I don't just do it with my clients in therapy. I relate that way with my friends and colleagues. And I don't mean in a therapeutic-y way, just in a natural, respectful way. Because having an attitude of pace, I don't get judgmental then. I'm slow to get angry. Why would I get angry if I don't know what it's about? So my curiosity is such a big part of me. If somebody says something or does something that seems sort of mean and rude to me, I'd be a bit surprised. So I would say, what's that about? The way you said that, I felt uncomfortable. What was going on? So my curiosity stops me from getting angry. And then as they talk and I have empathy for them, I express that and the connection is bigger. I accept the person, not the behavior. I might be very angry. A kid spit in my face. I was not happy. Hey, I'm not for spitting at. In this office, nobody spits on nobody. So the plan is, if you have a problem with me, you tell me. You do something. If you need to get up and walk around, that's fine. You need to go out to the bathroom, that's fine. But you don't spit on me. I'm very clear, very firm, very strong. And I took a deep breath. Any idea why you spit on me right then? Totally accepting the person who spit on me, wondering about their motive for spitting on me. What was that about? There's one kid, he was doing roughhouse with his father. And at the end of the roughhouse, he spit on me. Usually kids are angry when they spit on me. He wasn't angry, he's having a great time with his dad. And so I was still angry because I don't like spit. I don't like people to spit on me. And so he spits on me and I got a bit angry over his behavior, not about him. So then I said, what's that about? He didn't know what it was about. Anybody have a guess? I'll tell you, we don't have enough time to wait. I'll tell you. He reminded me, and I was right, of my daughters when they were babies. They get all excited. What do? They bite you. Have any of you been bitten by a baby?
Oh.
Yeah, babies bite because they get all excited. They can't regulate the intense emotion. So this beautiful thing he was doing with his dad was so exciting to him, he couldn't regulate it. He had to spit. He should have spit on his dad. Why did he spit on me? Why did he spit on his dad? Anyway, that's what it was. And when I talked about how excited, he felt so relieved because he was so ashamed of spitting on me because we had a decent relationship and he was feeling very close to his dad. His dad wasn't happy to spit on me. Yeah. So anyway, yes, Pat, it's an attitude. And it really helps me to go into the world of the child or of the other person. I look for playfulness, not in a pushing way. I'm not going to tell jokes around trauma, but if there can be some lightness here and we laugh and giggle a little bit, it keeps us connected, especially for kids who don't like affection or they don't want to be special to anybody. If you get eye contact and they're laughing with you, they feel close and they don't know why they feel close. If you express any, affirmations about the person there, you're such a great kid, oh, they get worse. But playfulness often is, I call it affection light. It's a way to get close without affection. And then acceptance of the person. I'm rigid, I'm firm about that. I don't accept all your behavior, but I accept your motives, your thoughts, your feelings, your wishes. Curiosity without judging. A lot of kids, a lot of parents have teenagers who don't talk at all because the parents spend too much time judging their inner life. Oh, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't think that. You shouldn't feel that. You shouldn't want that. And the kids don't tell you what they think, feel, or want anymore. But if they can tell me, they won't show it in their behavior. So, and in the empathy is this. I'm with empathy. Sometimes parents don't quite get the empathy. They think it's reassurance. The kid says, nobody at school likes me. And the parent says, oh, Johnny likes you. He came over to visit last weekend. He likes you. That's not empathy. That tries to make the experience of nobody likes me get smaller by arguing with the kid, presenting out why somebody likes you. Empathy is, if you believe that nobody likes you, that'd be very painful for you. That must be very lonely for you. That must be very hard for you. Staying with the experience is empathy. Now, after that, I'll be curious about it. Have you been thinking that long? Are there times you don't think that nobody likes you? And then maybe after that, I'll give some reassurance. Well, I don't see it that way. I could think of John. I could think of Susan. I could think of Ron. And my sense is they genuinely like you. How do you make sense of the fact that it seems to me they do, and you still don't think they do? But that's later in the conversation. The first is empathy.
Do you have time for one more
Oh,
question?
of course. For you, Pat. Well, not
right.
you. If anyone else have
We're
a
very
question,
close to 6, but I'm going to ask a final chat question.
yes, Pat.
This is from Lisa. Can you speak to the dynamics when kids turn that shame to rage on themselves and it turns to despair or self-harm?
Well, I think that's a good question. Probably the despair is likely to be a sign of progress. That the rage is a defensive reaction against the awareness of the shame. So as that gets smaller, so the rage doesn't protect you from shame as much because you're able to face the shame more. Well, I'm a bad person, so I'm facing what to me is an objective reality. I'm a bad person. And then it really is dawned on me, I'm a bad person. Now the despair is not a defense. That's sort of a primitive primary affective state or emotion that would naturally flow from being convinced I'm a bad person. So then I would have experience and communicate empathy for the despair, being with the person in that space. Just like with shame, empathy, the beauty of empathy is you're not alone then. Somebody is with you in that emotion that you're feeling. It's very, very hard to face alone. A lot of kids can't face trauma because they're alone with the trauma. Nobody else wants to be there with them in the trauma. But if I can be emotionally stable enough myself and strong enough myself to be with a person in their despair, the despair is going to start to lighten. Really will. Empathy is, I can't say. And sometimes I feel badly that in mental health circles, there's a need for evidence-based therapies now, and which is fair, evidence-based. I mean, sure, therapists shouldn't be reading tea leaves. I'm not putting that down if you're a specialist in reading tea leaves, but in general, therapists are not. So, so then you want, what makes a very good therapist? Well, before many of you were born, you and I were alive then, Pat, but in 1950, the first random control study of therapeutic interventions that were effective demonstrated that empathy was effective. In 1950, 72 years ago, it was the first proof that empathy, anyway, there's been more evidence for empathy than for anyone else, but a lot of people sort of minimize it I don't understand it. It's sort of a bias toward cognitive and behavioral interventions. It doesn't leave space for such a profound way to be with another person. Just like we tend to minimize the importance of the therapeutic relationship, which is over half the variance of success in therapy is the relationship. And again, I just get disappointed in that. Good therapists know that. Clients know that. Anyway. But I get over it. I just play with my grandson and forget about it. I get it. I move on.
Well, I thank you for actually being so playful with us today. I really get to pee and pace even more now that I've met you way.
Oh, thanks, Pat.
And and you are an inspiration to us all here at the Coalition. And
oh, wonderful!
I'm so delighted we got a chance to spend this time with you.
And I'm delighted I got a chance to spend with all of you of good humor and good, yeah.